16% of New Hampshire is owned by the government, federal, state, local government. That's not nearly enough, because the Wildlands Project is a plan to remove human beings and human activity from rural and suburban areas. Now you might be thinking to yourself, nobody's getting me out of my rural area. I got my well, I'm doing fine out here. I got my farm. Well, I live in a rural county. We have 1,384 miles of rural roads in my county. And our supervisors 2 years ago said that they were only going to be paving 150 miles of those roads. The rest of those roads are going to be pulverized and turned to gravel. You think that's going to have any impact on your property value, on your land use, when you can't get to your property or bring your goods to market? And how about closure of postal services, post offices? And how about monitoring your well? Well monitoring. You think you own that water? You don't own that water, that's for the common good. And how about all the services that you expect out in a rural area being restricted because why? Well, this is what our county told us. They said, we are further handicapped by a federal funding system that favors more urban, populated areas. Doesn't matter how many miles of roads you have, it's dependent on your population, how much money goes to your municipality to pave those roads. So you're looking at misidentification of wetlands. You're looking at habitats, ridge lines, streamside thresholds. I just appraised a 1,000-acre ranch right before I retired. I went around to see what that guy could do with his ranch, because even though he was zoned for Ag 60, which is one house per 60 acres, I knew there was no way he was going to get one house per 60 acres on that property. So I went and I looked at other properties. I talked to a guy who bought his property 10 years before. He said, Rosa, you're not going to believe this. It's 1,000 acres and we finally got one house on it. We had to donate 400 acres to the open space district in order to get those permits. And it took us years and years to get it. Misidentification of wetlands is something else. You know, when you think about the Sacketts, you know about the Sacketts from Idaho, that couple, they owned a piece of property they bought. Just think about this nice couple. Here they buy this piece of land, they spend like $23,000 for this nice little piece of land near this lake. It's in Priest Lake, Idaho. They're not right on the lake, they're near it. And their land is actually on an incline. So they get their permits, and they bring the bulldozer, the land movers out, and they start digging up the property. They're putting in their footings for their house. Here comes the EPA. The EPA says, you can't build here. You've got a wetland on your property. And they said, what do you mean? We got our permits. The EPA says, no, no, no. You got to put this land back exactly the way it was before you brought in your bulldozer, or we're going to fine you $37,000 a day. Well, the Sacketts were pretty upset by that. But instead of folding like most people, they sued, and they fought it. And I know you're going to be shocked to hear that this went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court. Can you believe that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, fought them all the way to the United States Supreme Court? And what happened? What did the Supreme Court decide? Did they decide whether there was a wetland there? No. What they decided was that these people, that we, the people, have the right, that they are entitled to a hearing to challenge the government's threats to fine them for building on their own land. They got the right to challenge the federal government. They had to go to the Supreme Court for that right. This is happening all across the country. One other thing you're going to see if you're in a rural area is designation of wildlands and wildlife corridors, because we need linkages, right? Bambi has to be able to get together with bamboo, right? So, you know, you've got, think about this, we're not just talking about corridors like a street wide. Think about this one, Yellowstone to Yukon. Think about this, the whole West Coast, the whole East Coast, the whole southern coast, the whole southern boundary of the US, and the whole northern boundary of the United States as wildways. This is the plan. You go to wildways.org, you're going to see that. It's in my book. Now when you think about that, they're not going to buy all that property. Some of that stuff's like, oh, it's a whole statewide. How are they going to get control of all of that property, all of that land? They're going to do it with regulations and restrictions that limit your usage of your property. This is happening everywhere, all across the country. You know, we've got a really big country, don't we? I fly back and forth across this country all the time, and I look down. And you know what I see? Agricultural land, a lot of it. Now, people who live in big cities, they don't know there's all this agricultural land out here. Because, you know, they don't go too far. Because they're using public transportation. They're going from 179th Street to 194th, and they think that the whole world looks like that. But if you get, I'll tell you, there's places in this country, if you don't have a cell phone, you go off the road, they're going to find you 5 minutes later a skeleton. We've got a really big country, and it is agricultural. Now, you're going to be told that these plans are designed to protect farmland. That is a lie. These are not for farmland. This is designed to remove you from the wilderness. Now, what we think of as wilderness, you know, you hear the word wilderness, you think you know what that is. Where is this thing? But I want to tell you what your government thinks wilderness is. Now, in California, we've got right near me, the Point Reyes National Seashore. That's a national seashore run by the National Park Service. Now there is a oyster company there. They've been there for 70 years. Long time they've been growing oysters. They grow 40% of the state's, I think it's 40% of the state's oysters in California are grown right there in this little place, nice little place on Drake's Bay. Well, they were told that they had, you know, they've got a lease with the National Park Service. And they were told that their lease is going to expire in 2012 and it just might not be renewed. Well, they fought that, and the National Park Service secretly went out and put up cameras in the bay to watch them because they were absolutely sure that the Drake's Bay Oyster Company was doing something to molest those little harbor seals out there. They took 250,000 photographs at the Drake's Bay Oyster Company, and they didn't see one incidence, not one, of them violating the little lives of anything out there in the bay. So what did? They deep sixed that information. They hid it so that they could say that the Drake's Bay Oyster Company was indeed endangering the wildlife there. Now, you know what? When you hear that they want to create a wilderness area, that right now is a potential wilderness area. They want to make it a designated wilderness area. What is that? It's defined by your U.S. Department of Agriculture as an area where the earth and its community of life are untrammeled by man, where man himself is a visitor who does not remain. Wildlands, wilderness. This is what's happening to people who are making their livelihoods out on land, people who are growers, people who are livestock owners. Livestock is unsustainable. Tillage is unsustainable. If you don't have a seed injection machine, those are about $250,000. You're a threat to the planet. If you're a miner, if you're mining granite, you're disturbing the Earth's surface. I suggest you take a look at a couple things. Here in New Hampshire, you've got the Innovative Land Use Planning Techniques Handbook for Sustainable Development. It's the Department of Environmental Services and Association of Regional Planning Commissions have published this. You're going to see in a transfer of development rights, which means that you out in the wild areas will sell your development rights to your land to people in centers of cities so that they can build higher and higher stories of development for your future. Now here's something I know that you may not have heard of, and that is food sheds. Now we all think we know view shed, watershed, but check this one out, food shed. Think about this. You're living in a transit village, formerly known as a city, in high density development, ground floor retail. You are not supposed to work out of that area, and you'll see this in the more recent transportation and development plans in your master plans. You will see that people are to be encouraged to live right where they work. And they are discouraging you by vehicle miles traveled taxes, by high cost parking, by, you're gonna love this one, they're gonna charge you more at the pump if you've driven more than you should have. Okay, now you're in your transit village, you're living on the 10th floor in downtown Concord for now. Now how do they decide who can live and how many people can live in that transit village? It is ringed by what's called a food shed. And this is an area, you're locavore, you're gonna like this. Because it's not that you're being cultivated, you are being manipulated, you are being propagandized to like the idea of locally grown food. The truth is that your local growers will be out of business. This is mega corporations will be bringing in your food, and they will be doing it in this ring around your transit village. Sometimes it's a 10-mile wide ring, 20-mile wide ring, and this will determine by the number of calories that can be grown, how many people can live in the transit village. You think I'm making this up, don't you? Go to Cornell University and food sheds and take a look. This is the way this is being designed. You are being indoctrinated with the idea that everything is going to be great, that we're going to be sustainable, that everybody's going to be happy and living in their transit village, and nobody's going to have your bike. Everything's going to be fine. Local food, it's going to be great. You don't need local government. It's redundant. Why should you pay for local government when you can have regional government? Who needs these local small towns? There'll be districts of your regional government. So you're going to see demolition of suburbs is happening now. Right now it's just happening in places like Detroit and Chicago and larger cities, but your cities are going to the federal government and they are asking for grants to demolish homes. This is at the same time that low-income housing developers are getting huge, huge grants to develop smart growth in the centers of your towns. Smart growth is the hardscape for your future poverty. You're being told to rethink progress. That's what it's about. Agenda 21 is a plan to produce social equity by impoverishing populations and creating total dependence on government. If you want an example of austerity measures, take a look at the European Union. Okay? This is the 1%. This is where we come together, all of us, because we're talking about a corporatocracy, mega corporations. We're talking about banks. We're talking about major influence that overrides jurisdictional boundaries. We're talking about privatization of our public services. We're talking about public-private partnerships, and what that is you, the public, take all the risk and subsidize the private developer. That's what a public-private partnership is. You want to hear what my favorite public-private partnership is? Prisons. Privately owned prisons. What do prisons need? Prisoners. How do you get more prisoners? You make more things crime. And you make sentences longer.
GrokTV.